I got a book, The Plato's Republic, outlining what the Republic should look like. What is a Republic? The Republic is decisions being made by a small group of people, ideally people that represent the people of their region as best as they can. He outlined what his philosophies were on why the Greek society was so great back in their era and what they can do to make the civilization better. I'm reading this out. There's things that I disagree with in here, and most of it is obviously immutable. As we talk about, the immutable is a timeless truth, so whether you want to like it or not, it is what it is. I'm going to read book 1. This book's much shorter, so the 10 books don't have titles, but these people kind of give an outline of what the title would be. And it's talking about wealth, justice, moderation, and their opposites. This sucks. The truth is, Socrates, that these regrets and also the complaints about relations are to be attributed to the same cause, which is not of old age, but men's character and tempers. For he who is of a calm and happy nature will hardly feel the pressures of age, but to him who is an opposite disposition, youth and age are equally a burden. So I was going to touch on it at the beginning, and he just got right into it. Kind of the feeling of age taking a hold of you is, what poisons have you put into your body, your mind, and your soul is how you're going to age. It's how you're going to age. So think of aging your soul as losing your purity in body and mind. If you pervert your mind, then your mind ages. Think of it, your spirit ages. Think of it as a child being pure and doesn't know anything about sex until somebody introduces it to them. And then they have knowledge of it, so they're less pure. And then when they do the act out, then they become even less pure, and they age their spirit. The body ages with the same kind of poisons that you put into it, so not that sex is a poison, but it's the fragmenting the soul out with multiple sexual partners. It's hard to really bond with somebody. Yes, Calcifer said, but I rather suspect that people in general are not convinced by you when you speak thus. They think that old age sits lightly upon you, not because of your happy disposition, but because you are rich, and the wealth is well known to be a great comforter. Ha! And to those who are not rich and are impatient of old age, the same reply may be made, for to the good, poor man, old age cannot be a light burden, nor can a bad rich man ever have peace with himself. And I think that's interesting that that's at the beginning of the book tackles in the first couple of pages. It goes into the riches not being able to undo karma and the burden. It's like it seems to be a weight, a toll on the body, the mind, and the spirit all age together. Cherish the soul of him who lives in justice and holiness, and is the nurse of his age, and the companion of his journey, hope which is mightiest to sway the restless soul of a man. It's just that aging process is really something we're thinking about more than most people. As concerning justice, what is it? To speak the truth and to pay your debts, no more than this? And even to this are there no exceptions? This guy is trying to say he has peace because he doesn't owe anybody anything. He has everything he needs, and his future is taken care of, and he's done good by the world, so he doesn't have any bad blood with people that want to harm him. So he sleeps well at night because he's got no night terrors. He's got nothing. He's got no one chasing him at night. He's got no debts to wake up to until the morning, and he's found peace. That's what he's trying to say. And this guy's trying to say, but what if somebody gave you something? Should you give it back? Like, fuck you, stop it. I hate this that these fucking... Anyway. Alright, anyway, I want to get this done. And if the just man is good at keeping money, he is good at stealing it. That is implied in the argument. And after all, the just man has turned out to be a thief. And this is a lesson which I suspect you must have learned out of Homer, for he, speaking of Patroclus, a maternal grandfather in Odysseus, who is favored of his, affirms that was excellent above all men in theft and perjury. And so you and Homer Simonides are agreed that justice is an art of theft, to be practiced, however, for the good of friends, for the harm of enemies. That was thought you were saying. No, certainly not that, though I do not know what I did say, but I still stand by the latter words. So this guy is just a fucking piece of shit for whatever reason. He just, like, created a bunch of hypotheticals and then came to a stupid-ass fucking conclusion. The guy seemed like he was saying that the just man is somebody you want in charge of the money because they're not going to take advantage of the money, and then this guy just said because the just man understands evil means he's capable of doing evil, therefore he is evil, and therefore he'll steal it. Like, that's stupid. That's stupid theory. Someone to be just, they have to understand what evil is out there and really be able to understand it to provide justice in return. If you don't know what the evil is out there, you'll just overreact one way or another to something. Like, and so you and Homer and Simonides are agreed that justice is an art of theft, to be practiced, however, for good of friends and for the harm of enemies. I don't think that's what justice means. Justice to the harm of enemies. That's not what justice should be. That's what our system is set up. That's what our justice system is set up to be. And justice should be a way for everyone to find peace in their souls. Not just to get paid, just to get the bad guy. Lock him up and show him we can tell you who's boss. But I see the consequences. Many a man who is ignorant of human nature has friends who are bad friends, and in that case he ought to do harm to them, and he has good enemies whom he ought to benefit. But if so, we shall be saying the very opposite of that which we affirm to be the meaning of Simonides. Very true, he said, and I think that we had better correct an error into which we seem to have fallen in the use of words friend and enemy. What was the error, Polemarchus? I asked. We assume that he is a friend who seems to be, or who is thought good, and how to that error to be corrected. We should rather say that he is a friend who is, as well as seems good, and that he who seems only and is not good only seems to be and is not a friend, and an enemy that's the same may be said. You would argue that the good are friends and the bad are enemies. And he says, yes, this is good. I do like that. The fake friends, the wolves in sheep's clothing, everyone's pretending to be a friend. Ghislaine Maxwell is telling you how great Jeffrey Epstein is, how nice of a person all his friends are. They'll give you free stuff. They got all the money, so don't worry about it. They're all good people. Andy Taint is he's a nice guy that's leading a group of people. Friends, you gotta make sure that you're good friends too, because fake friends are gonna go do whatever they feel like and not give a shit about you, your happiness, or anybody, and do bad things just for their own pleasure and their own gain. And you'll forgive them or you won't forgive them, but they're no friend to you. They can be friendly. They know how to be friendly. They know how to put the sheep's clothing on and pretend. Anyway, when the just is the good, certainly, then to injure a friend or to injure anyone else is an act of the just man, but of opposite, who is the unjust. I think that what you say is quite true, Socrates. Then if a man says that justice consists in the repayment of debts, and that good is the debt which a just man owes to his friends, and evil the debt which he owes to his enemies, to say that this is not wise, for it is not true, if, as has been clearly shown, the injuring of another can be in no case just. I agree with you, said Polemarchus. Then justice is doing good to your friends and harm to your enemies. Most true, he said. Yes, but if this definition of justice also breaks down, what other can be offered? I say that if you want really to know what justice is, you should not only ask but answer, and you should not seek honor to yourselves from a refutation of an opponent, but have your own answer, for there is many a one who can ask and cannot answer. And now I will not have you say that justice is duty or advantage or profit or gain or interest, for this sort of nonsense will not do for me. I must have clearness and accuracy. So it seems that these guys don't agree with the philosophy of somebody else is what they're talking about. That punishing somebody is the answer, but like I said, there's gray areas. We can keep going into the abuse of power from people that think they deserve it for whatever reason. These fucking cunts do what they fucking do. Just fucking trash playing make-believe and abusing the community. I just seek to put an end to these fucking predators. These fucking predators that only know how to fucking steal and abuse people they deem bad. Listen, then he said, I proclaim that justice is nothing else than the interest of the stronger. Let me first understand you, I replied. Justice, as you say, is the interest of the stronger. You cannot mean to say that because Palamedes, the Phaeacian, is stronger than we are, and finds the eating of beef conducted to his bodily strength, that the eat of beef is therefore equally for our good, who are weaker than he is, and right and just for us? That's abominable, you Socrates. You take the words in the sense which is most damaging to the argument. Not at all, my good sir, I said. I'm trying to understand them, and I wish that you would be a little clearer. Well, he said, have you never heard the form of government differ? There are tyrannies, and there are democracies, and there are aristocracies. Yes, I know, and the government is a ruling power of each state. Certainly, and the different forms of government make laws democratic, aristocratical, tyrannical, which, with a view to the several interests in these laws, which are made by them for their own interests, are the justice which they deliver to their subjects, and whom transgress them they punish as a breaker of the law and unjust. And that is what I mean when I say that in all states there is the same principle of justice, which is the interest of government, and as the government must be supposed to have power, the only reasonable conclusion is that everywhere there is only one principle of justice, which is the interest of the stronger. Now I understand you, I said, and whether you are right or not, I'll try to discover. But let me remark that in defining justice, you have yourself used the word interest, which you forbade me to use. It is true, however, that your definition, the words of the stronger, he added. Now we are both agreed that justice is interest of some sort, but you go on to say of the stronger. About this addition, I am not sure, and must therefore consider further. Okay, before they go into the stronger, I just want to outline how they say each state has a rule of punishing problems, and it's always focused on the punishing of somebody that's done some harm. And as that's a way to deter, and it's a requirement to deter, it doesn't solve the problem of why it happened and ensuring it doesn't happen again. Do you admit that it is just for subjects to obey their rulers? I do. But are the rulers of the state absolutely infallible, or are they sometimes liable to err? To be sure, he replied, they are liable to err. Then in making their laws, they may sometimes make them rightly and sometimes not. True. When they make them rightly, they make them agreeably to their interests, then they are mistaken contrary to their interests. You admit that? Yes. And the laws which they make must be obeyed by their subjects, and that is what they call justice. Doubtless. Then justice, according to your argument, is not only obedience to the interests of the stronger, but the reverse. What is that you are saying? He asked. I'm only repeating what you're saying, I believe. But let us consider, have we not admitted that the rulers may be mistaken about their own interests in what they command, and also that to obey them is justice? Has not that been admitted? Yes. Then you must also have acknowledged justice not to be for the interests of the stronger when the rulers unintentionally command things to be done which are to their own injury. For if you, as you say, justice is the obedience with the subject renders to their commands, in that case, O wisest of men, is there any case from the conclusion that the weaker are commanded to do not what is for the interest, but what is for the injury of the stronger? Nothing can be clearer. I see. This is what I hate. Is they have rulers and subjects. This isn't what our society's built like. So I do want to pull a lot of the contents from what their culture, what made them great, and what they think made these guys great, and outline the different reasons different groups are great. We've already gone into the Jews use the Torah, so it outlines how their community should operate. And if everyone follows the rules of the Torah and knows the rules of the Torah, then they know they're not going to cause any infractions on each other, and their cult can gain power and strength. They're trying to get into the concept of even if the ruler's wrong, that it's still justice to execute because it's justice to follow the ruler. It's not justice. The U.S. government obviously is most power, so what they say goes. I want to create a republic that challenges the U.S. government. I hate talking about it, but the U.S. military is the biggest terrorist organization on the planet. The president's job and our military's job is to protect our borders and protect our people, and they've added it to protect our interests overseas. We're not creating peace in other places. It's like sexual warfare. Send a bunch of fucking dudes that are 18 to 20 to 25 and give them a shit ton of money and no responsibilities, and send them out to a new country all gassed up and all juiced up and just fit and lowly educated, and send them out to the bars to bang all the bitches and give all the money to the whores in the different countries and have their fun paid for by the U.S. taxpayer. And the way I'd seek to challenge the U.S. government is by, they talk about the guardian class, and these are most of the people that the military takes in. They have people that they paid for on public taxpayer dollars to go in and recruit for war.
so that they can be the ones in charge and power of who's growing the drugs, because our interests are the pharmaceutical companies that are feasting on the American people. That's what our military's interests overseas are protecting. Destabilizing regions by sending young, lowly educated men overseas to talk about how great America is, while the girls that they love are here getting banged by dudes at the bar and the casinos and whatnot. And it's biblical to have the tribes. To have a tribe of men and say, if the US government wants to fucking do anything with our fucking people, they have to get each state, each tribe involved in the war. And to do that, they have to earn the vote of the people in charge of that region. And it's what our government's supposed to be set up to, but it's not. It's a bunch of fucking bureaucrat trash that get paid to make whatever decision they get the most money to make. The way this works is the Bay County region, instead of putting people in jail, especially the juvie homes, should be training facilities to enter into like the guardian class and then be a member of society that actually works in our community. And the guardian class essentially is just people that are out in public that aren't going to do anything to disturb the public. They've been trained, so educated that they know their responsibility out in the public, their gratitude that they show back to the people for being able to live freely in this world when everyone else has to work so hard, trapped in the system. Their system is to go about and make sure everyone's lives are better, make sure they keep peace, have people trained on resolution more. Would they title this chapter of wealth, justice, moderation, and their opposites? They do. They really dive into, I guess, so deep into the concept of justice, and I agree with some of their concepts and some of their ideas, but I really want to focus on the education rather than just arbitrary dystopia is what we have. We have a judge said you're not allowed to do something. A lawyer cunt that steals fucking hundreds and thousands, millions of dollars from the public funds to figure out ways to control their neighbor with arbitrary rules. The guardian class will be set up to actually keep the peace. I'm gonna call them the cool commanders. I think I got a bunch of different words. I had a lot of time one day in the mental institution. I just went down the list of the biggest dictionary I could find in there and went down through all the CO words and wrote down all the ones that I like. So I got other ones too. Anyway, so the justice is in the interest of following the rulers, is what they say. It seems to go to, even if the rulers are wrong, it's still just to follow them. Do you mean, for example, that he who is mistaken about the sick is a physician and that he is mistaken, or that he who errs in arithmetic or grammar is an arithmetician or a grammatician at the time when he is making the mistake? In respect of the mistake, true, we say that the physician or arithmetician or grammarian has made a mistake, but this is only a way of speaking, for the fact is that neither the grammarian nor any other person of skill ever makes a mistake insofar as he is what his name implies. They none of them err unless their skill fails them. And when they cease to be skilled artists, no artist or sage or ruler errs at the time when he is what his name implies. Though he is commonly said to err, and I adopt a common mode of speaking, but to be perfectly accurate, since you are such a lover of accuracy, we would say that the ruler, insofar he is a ruler, is unerring, and be unerring always commands that which is for his own interest, and the subject is required to execute his commands, and therefore, as I said at first, and now repeat, justice is the interest of the stronger. Which seems to kind of sound like the stronger is the person who has more truth in the matter, is more right in the matter, not who has more power and authority and perceived authority, for the ladder of the hierarchy of strength is seen in our system to be whoever got this education as now the authority on this subject matter, rather than the authority being what the truth is. Science is trust Fauci when he says put your masks on, even though the masks are ineffective, and trust Bill Gates, when he says take these poisons, and then sells all the stock in the companies and the pharmaceutical companies after he gets rich off of selling the fucking poison to these fucking poor little sheeple. Poor little stupid, ignorant scientific method makes you a scientist. Understanding the scientific method and challenging an idea, that's what makes something science. And science couldn't have been done. People just said, trust the science. And that's what our system is set up to say. This person got a degree and now works for a pharmaceutical company. So know that they're doctors that work for the hospital. So know that they care for your interests. And the big bonus is that fucking Taylor Swift's new wife, Travis Kelce, got $20 million to tell everybody to take the poison. Crazy to me. It's crazy to me, these fucking lunatics that you people worship. And the money they make off of us. Scientific method to come to the truth. That's what we're leaving on. That's when science is realized, because you can't disprove your argument, and that's the point of it, is testing your argument to be able to be proven wrong or right. It doesn't necessarily matter what the outcome is. It matters that the idea was tested and tested and tested and tested until it couldn't be disproven anymore. And then something becomes science. The system is set up to say the person that got the authority position is the person of power. This guy's position, if I'm understanding it correctly, or even if I'm not, seems to be a good idea to say that the stronger is the one that's more found in reality. It will be better that I should ask you a question. Is the physician taken in the strictest sense of which you are speaking a healer of the sick or maker of money? And remember that I'm now speaking of the true physician, a healer of the sick, he replied. And the pilot, that is to say, a true pilot, is he a captain of sailors or a mere sailor? A captain of sailors. The circumstance that he sails in the ships is not to be taken into account, neither is he called a sailor. This is a long fucking trip around to fucking get to the point of they're just fucking arguing the semantics of the charlatans that just want to make a profit versus the actual people that want to heal. That's what they're talking about here. Long way to get around to that for both of us, because it's important. Most people are fucking fake, just faking it until they make it, and if they or fail and give up and quit and move on to something else that they're fucking fake at.
He said, so then I said, there is no one in any rule who, in so far as he is a ruler, considers or enjoys what is for his own interest, but always what is for the interest of his subjects or suitable to his art. To that he looks, and that alone he considers in everything which he says and does. That's just some way to describe a ruler. What does he say? There is no one in any rule who, in so far as he is a ruler, considers or enjoys what is for his own interest, but always what is for the interest of his subjects or suitable to his art. To that he looks, and that alone he considers in everything which he says and does. For the unjust is lord over the truly simple and just. He is stronger, and his subjects do what is for his interest and minister to his happiness, which is very far from being their own. Consider further, most foolish Socrates, that the just is always a loser in comparison with the unjust. First of all, in private contracts, wherever the unjust is the partner of the just, you will find that when the partnership is dissolved, the unjust man has always more and the just less. Secondly, in their dealings with the state, when there is income tax, the just man will pay more and the unjust less in the same amount of income. And when there is anything to be received, the one gains nothing and the other much. Observe also what happens when they take an office. There is the just man neglecting his affairs and perhaps suffering other losses and getting nothing out of public because he is just. Moreover, he is hated by his friends and acquaintances for refusing to serve them in unlawful ways. But all this is reversed in the case of the unjust man. I'm speaking of before of injustice on a large scale, in which the advantage of the unjust is most apparent. And my meaning will be most clearly seen if we turn to the highest form of injustice, in which the criminal is the happiest of men. The sufferers, or those who refuse to do injustice, are the most miserable. That is to say, tyranny, which by fraud and force takes away the property of others, not little by little, but wholesale, comprehending in one, things sacred as well as profane, private and public, for which acts of wrong, if he were detected perpetrating any one of them singly, he would be punished and incur great disgrace. They who do such wrong in particular case are called robbers of temples, and man stealers, and burglars, and swindlers, and thieves. But when a man, besides taking away the money of the citizens, is made slaves of them, then, instead of these names to be names of reproach, he is termed happy and blessed, not only by the citizens, but all who hear of his having achieved the consummation of injustice. For mankind censures injustice, fearing that they may be the victims of it, and not because they shrink from committing it. And thus, as I have shown, Socrates, injustice, when on a sufficient scale, has more strength and freedom and mastery than justice. And as I said, at first justice is the interest of the stronger, whereas injustice is a man's own profit and interest. He goes into the idea of happiness. He sees it at a really the most superficial base level
of visible happiness, but doesn't take the karmic balance. So when you can see the extreme highs of people that have wealth, or the skanks and man whores that are out there just partying away, there's the karmic toll comes in form of suicidal ideations and panic attacks. One guy said he had reoccurring nightmares of somebody chasing him. I got a lot of other examples that I don't really want to go through, so I'm not going to. But the concept of what he's saying is people that are willing to lie, cheat, and steal are going to have the most monetary things in this world, the easiest lifestyles, and there comes a level of happiness on the extreme level too, and then the crash on the other end, and then aging. They touched on it earlier. Body's the temple, so you should treat it. You should treat it like such and put good things into it. I'm not necessarily saying don't do the fun stuff. It's just the moderation behind it, and then to live the hedonist lifestyle. You can't be happy if you're destroying your happiness, because then you're just burning your own house down, and then everything just becomes empty. So just because people gain political power and do bad things doesn't mean that they're not going to be found out about it and have to pay retribution for what they've done, or God will have another plan for them for a way to pay. For my own part, I openly declare that I am not convinced, and that I do not believe injustice to be more gainful than justice, even if uncontrolled and allowed to have free play. For granting that there may be an unjust man who is able to commit injustice either by fraud or force, still this does not convince me of the superior advantage of injustice. The fastest way to gain is by doing dishonest things. You can make a quick buck. You can make a quick buck here by manipulating somebody into giving up a buck. But that person's going to find out one day. They're not going to be happy, probably not going to do anything or retaliate, but they could tell their friend, and then the next person isn't going to work on it. At some point you're going to be found out, the fraudster you are. But if you're a just person and you're not doing injustice, then what you build creates a more stable foundation, and it can't be broken by somebody trying to tarnish your name, because you've made your name stronger, more reliable. You can stand on what you say rather than being found out and having to go run away and hide like a little drug dealing bitch. And how am I to convince you, he said, if you are not already convinced by what I've just said? What more can I do for you? Would you have me put the proof bodily into your souls? Heaven forbid, I said. I would only ask you to be consistent, or if you change openly and let there be no deception. For I must remark, Damascus, if you will recall that what was previously said, that although you began by defining the true physician in an exact sense, you did not observe a like exactness when speaking of the shepherd. You thought that the shepherd, as a shepherd, tends the sheep not with a view to their own good, but like a mere diner or banqueter, with a view to the pleasures of the table, or again, as a trader for sale in the market, and not as a shepherd. Yet surely the art of the shepherd is concerned only with the good of the subjects. He is only to provide the best for them, since the perfection of the art is already ensured whenever all requirements of it are satisfied. And that was what I was saying just now about the ruler. I conceived that the art of the ruler, considered as a ruler, whether in state or in private life, could only regard the good of his flock or subjects, whereas you seem to think that the rulers in state, that is to say, the true rulers, like being in authority. And then he said, think, nay, I am sure of it. And so they're having the disagreement right here of it's the same concept of the ruling class thinking that any decision that's their best interest is best for everyone else. So there's that kind of ruler, and then there's the ruler that realizes that if everybody is taken care of, the more once somebody has all of their needs met, then they start to have an abundance. And when people have an abundance, more often than not, they want to give away. They want to share their abundance with others. I'm such a slow reader, huh? So once somebody's needs are all met and they're taken care of, then they can create. Then they can start to share what makes them special. And so he says, no, I'm sure of it. Then why, in the case of lesser offices, do men never take them willingly without payment, unless under the idea that they govern for the advantage not of themselves but of others? Let me ask you a question. Are not the several arts different by reason of their each having a separate function? Yes, that is the difference, he replied. And each art gives us particular good, and not merely a general one medicine.
For example gives us health, navigation, safety at sea, and so on. Yes, he said, and the art of payment has the special function of giving pay. But we do not confuse this with other arts any more than the art of the pilot is to be confused with the art of medicine. Because the health of the pilot may be improved by a sea voyage, you would not be inclined to say, would you, that navigation is the art of medicine, at least if we were to adopt your exact use of language. Certainly not. Or because a man is in good health when he receives pay, you would not say that the art of payment is medicine. I should not. Nor would you say that medicine is the art of receiving pay because man takes fee when he is engaged in healing. Certainly not. And we have admitted, I said, that the good of each art is specifically confined to the art. Yes, then if there be any good which all artists have in common, that is to be attributed to something of which they all have a common use. True, he replied. And when the artist is benefited by receiving pay, the advantage is gained by an additional use of the art of pay, which is not the art professed by him. He gave a reluctant assent to this. Then the pay is not derived by the several artists from their respective arts, but the truth is that while the art of medicine gives health, and the art of the builder builds a house, another art attends them, which is the art of pay. The various arts may be doing their own business and benefiting that other which they preside, but would the artist receive any benefit from his art unless he were paid as well? I suppose not. But does he therefore confer no benefit when he works for nothing? Certainly he confers a benefit. Then now, Thermascus, there is no longer any doubt that neither arts nor governments provide for their own interests, but as we are before saying, they rule and provide for the interests of their subjects, who are the weaker and not the stronger. To their good they attend, and not to the good of the superior. And this is the reason, my dear Damascus, why, as I was just now saying, no one is willing to govern, because no one likes to take in hand the reformation of evils which are not his concern without remunerations. And ain't that just fucking something to take in hand the reformations of evil which are not his concern is not something most people want to do. What do you mean, Socrates, said Glaucon. The first two modes of payment are intelligible enough, but what the penalty is I do not understand, or how a penalty can be a payment. You mean that you do not understand the nature of this payment, which to the best men is the greatest inducement to rule? Of course you know that ambition and avarice are held to be, as indeed they are, a disgrace. And for this reason I said money and honor have no attraction for them. Good men do not wish to be openly demanding payment for governing, and so to get the name of airlings, nor by secretly helping themselves out of the public revenues to get the name of thieves. And not being ambitious, they do not care about honor. Wherefore necessity must be laid upon them, and they must be induced to serve from the fear of punishment. And this, as I imagine, is the reason why the forwardness to take office, instead of waiting to be compelled, has been deemed dishonorable. Now the worst part of the punishment is that he who refuses to rule is liable to be ruled by one who is worse than himself. And the fear of this, as I conceive, induces the good to take office, not because they would, but because they cannot help, not under the idea that they are going to have any benefit or enjoyment themselves, but as a necessity, and because they are not able to commit the task of ruling to anyone who is better than themselves, or indeed as good. For there is reason to think that if a city were composed entirely of good men, then to avoid office would be as much an object to contention as to obtain office is at present. And that's pretty great to say that if everybody were doing what they're supposed to be doing and living a peaceful life, and having to take on a responsibility to govern over people that don't need to be governed over would just be seen as like a waste of time, because then you already have utopia, and that's when communism fails to create the utopia, because the people in charge never want to relinquish it once the city and the state operates as it should, without them needing to pushing buttons keep things going anyway. Well then, Thermascus, I said, suppose you begin at the beginning and answer me. You say the perfect injustice is more gainful than perfect justice. Yes, that is what I say, and I have given you my reasons. And what is your views about them? Would you call one of them virtue and the other vice? Certainly. I suppose that you would call justice virtue and injustice vice, without a charming notion, so likely to see that I affirm injustice to be a profitable and justice not. What else then would you say? The opposite, he replied. I would call justice vice. No, I would rather say sublime simplicity. Then would you call injustice malignity? No, I would rather say discretion. And do the injustice appear to you to be wise and good? Yes, he said, at any rate, those of them who are able to be perfectly unjust, who have the power of subduing states and nations. I do not think that I misapprehended your meaning, Damascus, I replied, but still I cannot hear without amazement that you class injustice with wisdom and virtue, and justice with the opposite. Certainly I do so class them. Now I said, you are no more substantial and almost unanswerable grounds. For if the injustice which you were maintaining to be profitable had been admitted by you as by others to be vice and deformity, an answer might have been given to you on received principles. But now I perceive that you will call justice honorable and strong, and to the unjust you will attribute all the qualities which you are attributed by us before to the just, seeing that you do not hesitate to rank injustice with wisdom and virtue. You have guessed most infallibly, he replied, and I certainly ought not to shrink from going through with the argument so long as I have reason to think that you, Thermascus, are speaking for real mind, for I do believe that you are now in earnest and are not amusing yourself at our expense. But will you be so good as to answer one more question? Does the just man try to gain any advantage over the just? Far otherwise. If he did, he would not be the simple amusing creature which he is. And would he try to go beyond just actions? He would not. And he would regard the attempt to gain an advantage over the unjust. Would that be considered by him as just or unjust? He would think it just and would try to gain the advantage, but he would not be able. And then that's false. That's false. Like I said, the unjust get found out. The just, all they have to do is talk about the unjust behavior, and then everybody knowing either keeps that person in check, or they can protect themselves from being swindled by the fucking crook, the fake ass fucking cunt. Whether he would or not would not be able, I said, is not the point. My question is only whether the just man, while refusing to have more than another just man, would wish and claim to have more than the unjust. Yes, he would. And what of the unjust does he claim to have more than the just man, and to do more than is just? Of course, he said, for he claims to have more than all men. And the unjust man will strive and struggle to obtain more than the just man or action, in order that he may have more than all. True. We may put the matter thus, I said, the just does not desire more than his like, but more than his unlike, whereas the unjust desires more than both his like and his unlike. Nothing, he said, can be better than that statement, and the unjust is good and wise, and the just is neither. Good again, he said, and is not the unjust like the wise and good, and the just unlike them? Of course, he said, he who is the certain nature is like those who are of certain nature. He who is not, not. And the wise and the good will not desire to gain more than his like, but more than his unlike and opposite. I suppose so. Whereas the bad and ignorant will desire to gain more than both. Yes, but we do not say, Damascus, that the unjust goes beyond both this his like and unlike. We are not we're not these your words. They were. And you also said that the just will not go beyond his like, but his unlike. Yes. Then the just is like the wise and good, and the unjust like the evil and ignorant. That is the inference. And each of them is such as his like is. That was admitted. And the just has turned out to be wise and good, and the unjust evil and ignorant. As we were now agreed that justice was virtue and wisdom, and injustice vice and ignorance, I proceeded to another point. Well, I said, Damascus, that matter is now settled, but we were not also saying that injustice and strength, do you remember? Yes, I remember, he said. But do not suppose that I approve of what you are saying, or I have no answer. If however I were to answer, you would be quite certain to accuse me of haranguing. Therefore, either permit me to have me say out, or if you would rather ask, do so, and I will answer. Proceed. Then I will repeat the question which I asked before, in order that our examination of the relative nature of justice and injustice may be carried on regularly. The statement was made that injustice is stronger and more powerful than justice, but now justice, having been identified with wisdom and virtue, is easily shown to be stronger than injustice. If injustice is ignorance, this can no longer be questioned by anyone, although injustice can be done intentionally knowing, then it's not ignorance. It's ignorant in the fact that it's short-sighted and it's going to cause harm on your person and very well others, but going to come with a karmic toll. And so acting out and doing injustice is just ignorant. But I want to view the matter of Damascus in a different way. You would not deny that a state may be unjust and may be unjustly attempting to enslave other state, or may have already enslaved them and may be holding many of them in subjection. True, he replied, and I will add that the best of the most perfectly unjust state will be most likely to do so. I know, I said, that such was your position, but what I would further consider is whether this power which is possessed by the superior state can exist or be exercised without justice or only with justice. If you are right in your view of injustice is wisdom, then only with justice, but if I am right, then without justice. I am delighted, Damascus, to see you not only nodding assent and dissent, but making answers which are quite excellent. And would you have the goodness also to inform me whether you think that the state, or any army, or band of robbers and thieves, or any other gang of evildoers could act at all if they injured one another? No, indeed, he said they could not. But if they abstain from injuring one another, then they might act together better. Yes. And this is because injustice creates division and hatred and fighting, and justice imparts harmony and friendship. Is not that true, Damascus? I agree, he said, because I do not wish to quarrel with you. How good of you, I said, but I should like to know also whether injustice, having this tendency to arouse hatred, wherever existing, among slaves or among free men, will not make them hate one another and set them at variance and render them incapable of common action? Certainly. And even if injustice be found in two only, will they not quarrel and fight and become enemies to one another and to the just? They will. And suppose injustice abiding in a single person, would your wisdom say that she loses or that she retains her natural power? Let us assume that she retains her power. Yes, is not the power which injustice exercises of such a nature that wherever she takes up her abode, whether in a city, in an army, in a family, or in any other body, that body is, to begin with, rendered incapable of united action by reason of sedation and distraction? And does it not become its own enemy and at variance with all that opposes it, and with the just? Is not this the case? Yes, certainly. And is not injustice equally fatal in existing in a single person, in the commonplace, rendering him incapable of action because he is not at unity with himself, and in the second place making him an enemy to himself and the just? Is not that true, Damascus? Yes. I know, my friend, I said, surely the gods are just. Granted that they are, but if so, the unjust will be the enemy of the gods, and the just will be their friends. Feast away in triumph, and take your fill of the argument. I will not oppose you, lest I should displease the company. Well then, proceed with your answers, and let me have the remainder of my repast. For we have already shown that the just are clearly wiser and better and abler than the unjust, and that the unjust are incapable of common action. Nay, more that this that to speak as we did of men who are evil, acting at any time vigorously together, is not strictly true. For if they had been perfectly evil, they would have laid hands upon one another. But if it's evident that there must have been some remnant of justice in them which enabled them to combine. If there had not been, they would not have injured one another, or they would have injured one another as well as their victims. And isn't that something to think about? They were but half villains in their enterprises. For had they been whole villains and utterly unjust, they would have been utterly incapable of action. That was, as I believe, the truth of the matter, not what you said at first. But whether the just have better and happier life than the unjust is a further question which we also propose to consider. I think that they have, and for the reason which I have given, but still I should examine it to furthermore, for no light matter is at stake, nothing less than the rule of human life. Proceed. I would proceed by asking a question. Would you not say that the horse has some end? I should. And the end of the horse or of anything that would be considered not, which would be that which could not be accomplished, or not so well accomplished by any other thing. I do not understand, he said. Good. Fucking explain it. Can you see except with the eye? Certainly not. Or hear except with the ear? No. These then may be truly said to be the ends of these organs. They may. But you can cut off a vine branch with a dagger or with a chisel, and in many other ways, of course, and yet not so well as with the pruning hook made for this purpose. True. May we not say that this is the end of the pruning hook? We may. Then now I think you will have no difficulty in understanding my meaning when I ask the question whether the end of anything would be that which could not be accomplished, or not so well accomplished by any other thing. This freaking guy is saying something along the lines of the ends of what you are, your end. I don't know. This sucks. This sucks. Is what your highest, your best, most value you bring to yourself and humanity is your ends. That's where you're headed towards. That's where everyone's headed towards, or should be at some point. Has the voice in their head or the feelings they have drive them towards that. Whether they fight it or not is a whole different story, which they kind of dive into here a little bit anyway. I understand your meaning, he said, in the sense, and that to which an end is appointed has also an excellence. Need I ask again whether the eye has an end? It has, and has not the eye an excellence? Yes, and the ear has an end and an excellence also. And the same is true of all the other things. They have each of them an end and a special excellence. That is so. And can the eye fulfill their end if they are wanting in their own proper excellence and have a deficit instead? How can they, he said, if they are blind and cannot see? You mean to say if they have lost their proper excellence, which is sight? But I have not arrived at the point yet. I would rather ask the question more generally and only inquire whether the thing which fulfill their end fulfill them by their own proper excellence and fail of the fulfilling them by their own deficit. Certainly, he replied. I might say the same of the ears. Then ears, when deprived of their own proper excellence, they cannot fulfill their end. True, and the same observation will apply to all other things, I agree. Well, and has not the soul an end which nothing else can fulfill? For example, to superintend and command and deliberate and the like. Are not these functions proper to the soul, and can they rightly be assessed to any other? To no other. And is not life to be reckoned among the ends of the soul? Assuredly, he said. And has not the soul an excellence also? Yes. And can she or can she not fulfill her own ends when deprived of that excellence? She cannot. Then an evil soul must necessarily be an evil ruler and superintendent, and the good soul a good ruler. Yes, necessarily. And we have admitted that justice is the excellence of the soul, and injustice the deficit of the soul. That has been admitted. Then the just soul and the just man will live well, and the unjust man will live ill. That is what the argument proves. And he who lives well is blessed and happy, and he who lives ill the reverse of happy. Certainly, then the just is happy and the unjust miserable. So be it. And the unjust enjoys their misery, so they have some sadistic connection to their misery that drives them some internal pleasures. But happiness and not misery is profitable, of course. Then, my blessed Thermascus, injustice can never be more profitable than justice. Which that's the point I think they're trying to get to right there is the happiness is profitable and misery is not profitable. They can all get you different attention in one way, but I guess they can both be profitable, depending upon how you look at it. Still keeping intact the karmic toll. Doing evil causes you and your community and your victim suffering. So have I gone from one subject to another without having discovered what I sought at first, the nature of justice? I left that inquiry and then turned away to consider whether justice is virtue and wisdom, or evil and folly, and then arose a further question about the comparative advantages of justice and injustice. I could not refrain from passing on that, and the result of the whole discussion has been that I know nothing at all, for I know not what justice is, and therefore I am not likely to know whether it is or is not a virtue, nor can I say whether the just man is happy or unhappy.